Welcome to sunny San Diego for Gravity This Season. This series of videos will bring you principle-driven strategies and techniques for the sports of swimming, biking, and running, kind of a triathlon theme. So we hope that these videos bring you innovative ways to think about how you're training your clients, whether recreationally or competitively, for any of the following sports. This segment is for swimming, titled Glide So You Can Ride. What that means is that we're going to focus on using the upper body to salvage the lower body. If you're working with a triathlete, many times they're going to work the upper body as much as possible during the swim to save the legs so that they can ride and that they can run. So we're going to focus on the gliding in the scapula, we're going to focus on the gliding over the water, really kind of an upper extremity focus for this swimming video. To review the principles of swimming, we know it's a whole body movement. We know that we are going to be training in what's called land-based swimming. So things are going to be a little bit different. So we'll do the best we can to mimic the activity. There's a lot of coordination involved. There is obviously no buoyancy involved, but those are things you take into consideration with your athlete or your client. You know, when I get into the pool, a lot of times I sink like a rock. So I've got to focus on some of these techniques in order to keep my pelvis up in the air. So our strategies for today are going to be to get the arm in the trunk glide, meaning that you're really going to focus on reaching. So we want to lengthen in the frontal plane, we want to lengthen in the transverse plane, we want to lengthen in the sagittal plane to be able to load so that we can explode through the water. That reach is real important. You think about going through the water to really be able to reach as far as you can, to fire up all the proprioceptors, to turn everything on, to be able to concentrically explode through the movement. Okay, we're going to get started now with some specific techniques. We're going to bring Nicole in again. You're going to swim in, get a little swim action. Well, that's a sports-specific warm-up right there. Okay, we're going to borrow from Pilates the tow bar. You can also do this with the squat stand or without anything at all. This just gives the client something to hold on to. What we're going to do is we're going to pre-position the hip in extension and we're going to drive. We know that the pelvis and the shoulder are in sync during swimming. So we're going to do that, but we're going to pre-position the pelvis or the hip into extension. So go ahead and drive all the way back. This is going to be the same position for the lower body. And then we're going to use this right arm because her right hip is extended. And we're going to do kind of a 3D warm-up, meaning that we're going to drive and wake up kind of a wake-up call for the proprioceptors through all the way through the shoulders, the pecs, the abdominals, the obliques. Yeah, we'll just go through a couple repetitions. Your leg will stay back there the whole time. So we're just driving the pelvis with the shoulder. So we're getting a sagittal plane driver. And when we say 3D, what I mean is we're going to do sagittal, we're going to do frontal, and we're going to go transverse so that we cover all the bases with regards to the proprioceptors warming up, the muscles, the soft tissue, and everything else. Okay, so we've got our sagittal plane, and now what we do is a frontal plane, which is kind of a lateral overhead reach in both directions. Good, so what I think a better idea is to just use the right arm to go through an opposite side lateral reach or a left side lateral reach. And with regards to repetition, it's really whatever you feel comfortable with. A lot of times when I do warm-ups, it might be 6, 8, 10, 12, 15 repetitions. So it just depends. It's all about just getting the body stimulated and ready for the activity. Next, we'll do the opposite arm. We'll do the opposite arm in the frontal plane. So we're going to come back and forth this way in that frontal plane.
Sorry.
Nope, that's all right. So this way we just make sure that we're covering. So you can see the pelvis is moving, the hand is driving the movement, and she's getting a real nice lengthening of the lats, of the pectoral muscles, of the obliques, the abdominals. Even the adductors of that left hip are getting a nice lengthening. Okay, then we go into transverse plane. We'll go back to the right arm driver, and she'll pre-position an extension, and then just drive all the way around. Right side rotation, left side rotation. Very good, perfect. So again, hand is driving the movement, exactly like swimming, where the arms drive and they lead the movement. The pelvis kind of follows. The pelvis is moving in the same direction, as opposed to something like, you know, if you're throwing a baseball where sometimes you have the pelvis moving in one direction, the shoulder moving in the other. Good, Nicole switches arms, and we'll keep that right hip extended. And that's perfect. Now, for time's sake, you'd obviously go to the other side and stretch out the left hip in all 3 planes. So we'll continue with the next exercise, but know that, use both arms, use both directions. You've got a right side reach, a left side reach in the rotational and the frontal planes, and then you have a front and back reach with the sagittal plane. Our next exercise is going to be in kind of a side sitting position. Now this can be done in, if you know what mermaid position is, meaning that your legs are kind of out. You can be in high kneeling, or you can even be in seated. So we'll kind of show a few of each of those options just so you can understand it, and I'll talk a little bit about why they're different. So let's start you off with, let's turn you around so you can face the camera. You can see your big nice smile. And we'll just get you into a kneeling position. How about high kneeling right off the get-go?
All right.
So let's cover the movement pattern first before we add any resistance. Although the weight of their arm is going to give resistance as well. We're going to do the same thing, but we're going to focus on that lateral side. Now, just a quick little demonstration of when you swim, when you're driving through the water, if your arms are up over the water, you're rotated. In the frontal plane, you really want to focus on that lengthen. So during the catch, you're really lengthened. All the muscles are lengthened as much as they can go to be able to drive yourself through the water. So we're going to focus a little bit on frontal plane here. So what we'll do is, just to warm up the movement pattern again with the shoulder, is just to go a frontal plane overhead reach, kind of like what we just did, but now the hips aren't in extension. So she just drives through. This is the basic movement pattern, and what we'll do is we'll start to tweak it with resistance. So if you focus with me, just keep going. We're eccentrically loading, and then this would be the concentric exploding. Eccentric load, concentric explode. So I might add a couple drivers. So let me we'll start with a medicine ball, and this just adds a little bit of resistance, and it's going to emphasize that eccentric load. So we're going to load here, and then the ball actually assists in the explode. So we got to figure out, how do we drive it the opposite way? We can either use the ball, that's going to focus on eccentric. Let's do one more of those. And then I'm going to take that from you, and maybe I use a band. Anything that you've got around. You've got a band here. Now this is going to focus more on the explode. So we're going to drive through. I'm sorry, that's wrong. This is going to focus on that eccentric loading. I'll think it through as we're doing this. Go ahead and try a few of these. So this would be a concentric explode. So she's reaching, she's lengthening, a little bit of resistance here. Now if I wanted to focus on the opposite side, I just flip this around, and she does the same thing. But now this is working more on that eccentric component, and I can just kind of feel the resistance, see how much we're at. Maybe you just point your palm the other way. There you go, and drive through. Now if I had a wooden dowel or any type of bar, you could do that as well. Something to attach yourself to your client. That's perfect. Okay, I'll take this now. We'll just throw that off the set. And then you can obviously, why don't we try the mermaid for this position? We're going to do the same thing. But what I'm doing, what you're kind of seeing is a mumbled jumbled version, is if her arm's up and she's going through these, we want to have resistance coming from this way and from this way so that we cover all the bases. So if my resistance is coming this way, she has to pull through the lateral obliques, through the lats, through the pecs to be able to pull towards my hand over here. So she has to drive that way. If I pull from this side, then she's going to be doing the opposite motion. So we want to cover both sides. In the frontal plane, you have the right and you have the left. So if we add the cable can be tricky. It's a lot of resistance. We've got her down at a real nice low level. And what we've done is pre-positioned her into what we call mermaid position. That's where her legs are. And what happens here is we have now kind of stabilized the pelvis. So we've moved the fulcrum up into the trunk a little bit more because the pelvis can't move. In that high kneeling position, that pelvis was able to move. So this puts more emphasis on the upper extremities. And that's pretty tough, isn't it?
Yep.
So it doesn't take a whole lot. I think we're on level 2 right now. And you can use the front cable, you can use the back cable. Front cable is probably a little bit better. I use the back cable there. It's just going to be a little bit different. Now, with that particular exercise, you can do a seated. So if she goes back into just a regular seated position, then they can actually self-spot. So they do the same thing with the front cable this time. And by self-spotting, that means that the client has a little bit of a self-spot to coach to be able to kind of handle those tough spots where we get into a 90-degree angle between the lever and the line of pull. Then we know that that load is extremely high. So this is a real nice way to get the client to be able to open up, lengthen through that frontal plane to be able to reach, get the catch, and drive the hand through the water. Very well.
Thanks.
Very well done. Perfect. Okay, the next is going to be our side plank. So we've kind of warmed up. Obviously, you would have done the other side just to save a little bit of time so you don't have to sit at your computer and watch a little screen too long. Okay, this is going to be side plank. I'll give you both views. We'll give you the posterior view first. Is that a nice way to say it, a posterior view?
Like that.
And we've got her into a short lever. Now I'm going to take this tow bar off just to give you a better view. We'll start in a short lever version, meaning that the lever is going to be from her knee to her elbow. So if she just comes up into a plank, you can see that if she were to extend her feet out onto the floor or the ground, that's going to be a longer lever, and it's going to be a lot more difficult to maintain that pelvis in this position. So what we'll do is the same thing, that whole same theme of three-dimensional reaches, meaning that we're going to reach in the sagittal plane, the frontal plane, the transverse plane. Now here's a little trick. There's something called a tri-post, meaning that the planes kind of go along with her wherever she is. So now that she's in this position, she's in a lateral position, her lines are here. So in the sagittal plane, she's going to be moving up and down in this direction. In the frontal plane, she'll be moving laterally, and in the transverse plane, she'll be moving in that rotational left-right. You'll kind of see as we get going. Now, let's start in the sagittal plane, since that's where you're headed. That's perfect. Now, we're trying to drive the pelvis to move through the shoulders. So she's going through some nice drivers. She's getting a real nice closed chain stability activity for that right shoulder, and really focusing on that glide. Now, we're seeing the scapula glide as well, and you'll see that even more in that frontal plane. So let's go right into frontal plane. Now she's just going to come all the way overhead, and see, this is that glide, the arms coming out of the water, and this looks more like swimming because you're actually facing, your trunk is facing this way as you're reaching across for the catch. So you want to glide the scapula, you want to glide the hand so it stays way out of the water, and really focus on reaching. You want to really reach and get that trunk to bend. There it is. And then how about for the transverse plane, we flip you over on the other side, give you a little break, and they'd be able to see your nice smile. Okay, so we're short lever again. She's going to come up into plank, and let's just go real quickly through sagittal so you see both views. So she's getting a nice lengthening through the hip via the shoulder, and then back to that frontal plane, so you get that nice lengthening here to be able to reach up for the catch, drag through the water. And then finally, our transverse planing, that we're going to really get nice lengthening through the pectorals. If she wants to get tricky, she can reach all the way through this and thread the needle, as they call it in Pilates, to really allow that scapula to glide through that abduction or that protraction, whichever you want to call it. How's that feel?
Great.
Is it good?
Yeah.
So we're getting, those are nice exercises that you can easily do just with the weight of the arm. As soon as you put a ball in someone's hand, like a medicine ball or a band or even a dowel to give manual resistance, that's going to tweak the intensity, and you have to have tweaks in your program to progress the client. It's a real nice way to warm up, but you're going to have to add resistance. You've got lots of variations there. Finally, again, we're going to bring it all together with the swimmer. You've seen the swimmer exercise before. I'm going to crank up the resistance just a little bit. And during this segment, we're going to focus in more on the drive-through or the reach. So in the other video, you saw that we went through kind of the driving through the water. This time we're going to focus on that glide, the glide up on top of the water, so the body stays up on the water and the arm stays out of the water and whatnot. So as she drives through, how's that resistance? A little high? Okay, she's going to bend the elbow slightly. So you see, just go through a couple natural. I want to see what you do first. So what you're doing is you're adducting the shoulder, so that's where your lats come into play. You're going through internal rotation as you drive through the water, and then external rotation as you drive up. So let's break it down now. As she comes up, we've already covered that component. Now we're going to drive the shoulder up. So see how she's rotating. That helps to drive the pelvis into rotation, which helps you go through the water more like a keel or a skull. I'm using the wrong skull. I always wanted to use skull. So she drives up and then really focuses, let's do that right arm a few times, okay, on that reach. So everything that you've learned in the first few segments, you're going to reach, really lengthen through the trunk, and it's a little tricky because you're on this glide board, but she's really going to reach up and dig into the water. Now, take a little break real quick. We know that there are many techniques with whether the thumb goes down, and I'm not going to get into that because it's controversial and everybody's made up differently, so what works for one person may not work for another. The focus is on the scapular glide, the lateral trunk movements, the shoulder movements, all to help that client really get into that reach so that they can use the upper body to salvage the lower body for the run and for the bike. So again, many techniques. If you're a swim coach, use them. This is all just to get you to think a little bit differently. And if you take a look at any of these sports, it's all we really do is we try to identify the eccentric component and the concentric component. So the eccentric is the load, and then you go through what's called a transformation zone, where you go from an eccentric load to a concentric explode. Almost two different movements, but without that eccentric load, the concentric explode will be short. It will just be almost like bodybuilders working concentrically. You really want to allow the body to eccentrically load in order to get the most out of your reach and to help salvage the body for the rest of the triathlon.